Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 95 based on novel. So let's start. This time, the fiery red flower that was levitating in front of the enormous pink flower began to move. It rotated in the air and absorbed the icy blue beam. The beam disappeared, while the fiery red flower merely dimmed a little. The Snow Lady's attack wasn't that powerful, but it was still ultimate ice. It was absorbed and dispelled so easily, so it wasn't difficult to imagine what the red water's temperature was like. It had to be a temperature produced by ultimate fire. The large pink flower seemed to have been infuriated at this moment, and every single petal began to tremble before they started to sway rhythmically, and they shifted as if they were lifting something upwards. Qiu'er Yuhao's mouth hung slack as he looked on in fright. Flower after flower that resembled the one that had just appeared were created from the red lake water and positioned behind this huge pink flower. There were thousands of them, and they congregated behind the large pink flower in throngs and masses. This fellow can actually control the strange lake water. Qiu'er Yuhao hadn't imagined he would end up facing off against so many entities that originated from ultimate fire, and he was almost ready to tuck tail and run without any hesitation at all. However, an amicable female voice could be heard right at this moment. "Human, it's your good fortune that you can make it here, but I will no longer show you mercy if you continue to provoke me." Qiu'er Yuhao's charged soul thrusters were prepared to erupt before he suddenly stopped everything. He stared at the giant pink flower before him with slack eyes and his jaw half open as he mumbled, You can talk?" Qiu'er Yuhao had encountered soul beasts who could talk before, but it was the first time he had seen plants who could talk. Qiu'er came up beside Qiu'er Yuhao with a flash of golden light and grabbed his hand. Her face was full of anxiety as she muttered, "That's 100,000-year plant-type soul beast. Prepare to run." Yes, 100,000 years. Typically, only 100,000-year soul beasts could speak the human language. The Cerberus that he had seen before could speak the human language, and this peculiar giant flower before him also could. This meant the flower was likely to be a 100,000-year plant-type soul beast. No matter how much confidence Qiu'er Yuhao and Qiu'er had in their abilities, they would never consider themselves strong enough to fight a 100,000-year soul beast. A 100,000-year soul beast was comparable to a powerful titled Doluor, and certain especially formidable 100,000-year soul beasts could challenge a transcendent Doluor. They had actually run into an unassailable problem. "I'm not a 100,000-year soul beast." The giant pink flower's petals began to open and close, and her voice was just so friendly and warm that the two of them felt extremely comfortable listening to her. "Yes, you have an aura similar to the ice well. No wonder you could break through the jade phosphorus flowers outside to reach this place." The large flower muttered under her breath, and there seemed to be a hint of excitement in her voice. Qiu'er Yuhao and Qiu'er's soul power was completely interjoined. They glanced at each other, and they could see the astonishment in each other's eyes. This flower was clearly a 100,000-year soul beast, yet she claimed that she wasn't. Furthermore, her voice sounded warm and amicable, and it didn't seem like she harbored any intention of attacking them. Qiu'er Yuhao was extremely intelligent, and immediately tried to probe the flower. "Greetings, Senior. We found our way here by accident, and we don't know where this place is. We didn't want to provoke or offend you, and I hope that you can forgive us. So that's what happened. It's nothing much, I can forgive you." It was easy to talk to this giant pink flower, and the fiery red flowers that were floating in the sky returned to the red side of the lake and disappeared as she spoke. The pressure that Qiu'er Yuhao and Qiu'er had faced before vanished in an instant. Qiu'er Yuhao didn't lower his guard even though it was easy to talk to this large pink flower. He asked once more, "Senior, I don't know where we are. Since you can speak the human language, why do you say that you're not a 100,000-year soul beast?" The large pink flower replied, "This place is called the Icefire Yin-Yang Well. That person says that this place is one of the world's 3 great cornucopias. Since the two of you are here by accident, then please leave as quickly as you can. You are lucky to have met me. If you had run into the other short-tempered fellows, they would probably have killed you on the spot as fertilizer. However, I haven't seen humans for a long time, and I'm very happy to see you guys here today. Quick, talk to me, and I might even consider giving you some benefits." The corner of Qiu'er Yuhao's mouth twitched, because he realized to his surprise that this amiable enormous pink flower actually liked to nag. "All right. Let me accompany you in conversation, then. The empty space around you should be considered safe, right?" "I haven't asked yet, Senior, what is your name?" The large flower tilted as if it were a human head that was deep in thought. "That person says that I'm a medicinal herb, and he calls me the delicate silk immortal. You can call me Yu. "Yes, that name sounds good." "Does it sound good?" "Yes, it sounds really good." Qiu'er Yuhao hurriedly followed the large flower's conversation. He was thinking about something else. This flower was known as the delicate silk immortal, so she should also be a medicinal herb? An immortal herb, and a herb that had already evolved into a plant-type soul beast. "You haven't told me yet, Senior. Why do you say that you're not a 100,000-year soul beast?" Qiu'er Yuhao immediately fired off another question. The delicate silk immortal giggled and said, "That's because I haven't lived to 100,000 years of age. I'm only 10,000 years old. Actually, I'm a little more than 10,000 years old, but I can't really remember anymore." Wang Qiu'er beside Hu Yuhao blurted out, "That's impossible. How can you be only 10,000 years old? If you're just 10,000 years old, it'd be impossible for you to have enough consciousness and intelligence to evolve into a plant-type soul beast. Furthermore, you can already speak." Yu spoke with obvious pride. "I'm sure you didn't know this, but even though I'm not a 100,000-year soul beast, my abilities have reached that level. The icefire yin-yang well nourishes us, so the plants that live here grow 10 times faster than the plants in the outside world. That is the reason why I'm just 10,000 years old, but I'm equivalent to a 100,000-year plant. You humans are quite stupid, eh?" Astonishment. Yu made it sound so casual, but both Hu Yuhao and Wang Qiu'er were full of surprise and awe as they heard this. 1 day spent in this place was equivalent to 10 days in the outside world. Plant-type soul beasts could grow 10 times faster than if they were outside. What a terrifying number. That also meant that there were probably a lot more plant-type soul beasts in this place than they had initially thought, and they were probably far more frightening at the same time. It was just as the delicate silk immortal had said, that it was their good fortune that they came to her before going anywhere else. No, Niu Tian's guidance in his letter had saved them, because if they had gone somewhere else and encountered another short-tempered and aggressive 100,000-year plant-type soul beast, they would probably have been dead by now. "Hey, why aren't you guys talking anymore? Say something, guys. Chat with me, quickly. If not, I may decide to stop protecting you. Without my protection, even the plants and the icefire yin-yang well's aura will harm you." Thoughts spun in Hu Yuhao's head, and he quickly came to a decision. He bowed respectfully towards the delicate silk immortal and said, "I'm sorry, Yu, I've lied to you, and I am now apologizing to you. The truth is that we didn't come here by accident, and we're here for a purpose. Someone wants me to come here to find a book. Have you seen this book?" The delicate silk immortal's enormous flower suddenly began to sway vigorously from side to side. So you have been sent by that person. It's actually him. How is he? I haven't seen him for so long, and he doesn't often come back to see everyone. TSK. Truthfully, Hu Yuhao didn't know who he was referring to. Was it referring to Wang Dong's father or Niu Tian? He should be all right. Is that book really with you? Hu Yuhao continued to probe. Yes, it is. The purple stamen in the flower's center began to sway rhythmically, and an ancient book that was crafted from some unknown material drifted into view. Hu Yuhao was elated. Every single one of Uncle Niu Tian's words have turned out to be true. I just didn't expect this book to be protected by a 100,000-year plant-type soul beast. That's incredible. Is the Clear Sky sect actually that powerful? Hu Yuhao still didn't know what other plants there were inside this place, but he was absolutely certain that this valley was filled with exotic entities and resources. Any plant here grew 10 times faster than they normally would. What kind of principle was that? Can you give it to me, Yu? Thank you. Hu Yuhao began to feel excited as he realized that he could possibly retrieve the medicinal herb that could save Wang Dong's life. No can do. I've been protecting it for 10,000 years, so how can I give it to you so easily? Yu's answer made it sound as if she couldn't bear to part with that book. 10,000 years? Hu Yuhao was stunned on the spot. He suddenly realized that the person that had left this book behind, the person that Yu was speaking of, wasn't Niu Tian, and neither was it Dong's father. Who could that be? 10,000 years. He left this book here for 10,000 years. That's almost impossible to believe. Yes. It's been 10,000 years. That person said that this book can only be given to his descendant, or to someone with the right destiny. Furthermore, his descendants have to undergo a test before they can claim this book. You have to do 2 things if you want this book. You have to prove that you're his descendant, and then you have to pass the test. Only then can you take it. Hu Yuhao asked confusedly, "How can I prove that?" The delicate silk immortal's voice became a little solemn as she said, "It's quite dangerous if you want to prove yourself. If you are unsuccessful, then you might die. That's the rule he left behind. He said that this place is almost like heaven on earth, and we can never let evil humans know about this place. Those that are pretending to be his descendants will have to die. I will definitely not kill you, but it's hard to say the same about the other guys. Are you sure you want to prove that you're his descendant?" Hu Yuhao felt his heart skip a beat. He understood that the delicate silk immortal was speaking the truth. Plant-type soul beasts could be in every corner of this place, and he probably wouldn't even have a chance to run if they all attacked him at the same time. Hu Yuhao's calm and composure paid off at this moment. He pondered momentarily before he said, Yu, can you tell me how I can prove that I'm his descendant? Someone directed me here, but I do not know whether I am his descendant. I don't wish to die, so can you tell me how I can prove that I'm his descendant? This way, I will be surer of myself. Yes, all right. You have to eat an herb to test if you're his descendant. If you survive after ingesting it, that proves that you're his descendant, and if you die, that means you're not, ah? Hu Yuhao had never expected the test to be like that. There weren't any hints or clues at all. It would be truly regrettable if he died from rashly eating some herb. What herb is it? Hu Yuhao pressed the issue. The delicate silk immortal shook her large flower and said, I can't tell you that. If you decide to take this test, then I will bring it to you. No, you can't do it. Wang Qiu'er exclaimed almost without hesitation, and she grabbed Hu Yuhao's arm while she stared at him anxiously. Hu Yuhao turned around to her, and his eyes were full of complicated emotions. It's likely that I will succeed, Qiu'er. Even though I don't know what this thing about descendants is about, and I don't know who the person who left this book behind 10,000 years ago was, I know that obtaining this book is the only way I can find the medicinal herb to save Dong's life. Uncle Niu Tian directed me here, and I trust that he won't harm me. He must think that I'm a descendant of the person that left this book behind, and so he has assigned this task to me. Therefore, I am 50% certain that I will be fine. No, absolutely not. Wang Qiu'er's words were decisive. 50%. The other 50% will cost you your life, don't you know that? Do you think it's worth it for you to die just like that? I can tell you that every single plant in this place is sophisticated, and I have studied plant-type soul beasts before. However, I do not recognize more than 2/3 of the plants in this place. Your chances of survival don't even stand at 50%, I don't even think you have a 30% chance to survive. If you die, Wang Qiu'er suddenly realized that Hu Yuhao didn't seem to be listening to her. His eyes seemed a little vacant, and he was looking up diagonally into the sky, as if he were thinking about something. Yes, Hu Yuhao was thinking, and he was thinking about Wang Dong. The Wang Dong that he knew surfaced continuously in his mind, to the point when Wang Dong became Wang Dong. Wang Dong was his arrogant dormmate, and then became his best buddy. They cultivated together, studied together, and teacher Juyi scolded them when they were late together. They fought side by side in the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament, and they fought with everything they had to defend Shrek's honor and glory. At the Sea God's fate on Sea God's Lake, the raiment of light had been heavily imprinted in the deepest parts of his heart. The truth was that he had felt that something wasn't right with Wang Dong a long time ago, and had wanted to test her gender when they met again. However, he didn't have to investigate anything, and she revealed her gender to him during the Sea God's fate. Mutual feelings, love at first sight, love at second sight, destined in 3 lives, eternal love. Hu Yuhao couldn't forget about everything that had happened that day, and how beautiful she was. She's the Clear Sky sect's little princess, but she still chose me without any regrets or complaints. He could never forget the nights that he had shared with her, every night when they stayed together beneath the same roof, the same window, and every night when they cultivated together. Hu Yuhao was absolutely certain that Wang Dong would give everything she had for him, too. He could feel the love she had for him. She had become a lot gentler than before, and her love for him drove this personality change. Everything fell into his eyes. He could clearly remember that Wang Dong had shyly told him when she gave him the pouch that her first uncle had told her she could only give the pouch to him when she was completely sure that he was the one. This meant she was giving her entire life to him. Dong. Tears trickled down Hu Yuhao's cheeks. His eyes were full of the memories he had of her. I miss you so much, Dong. Wang Qiu'er looked identical to Wang Dong, and she was standing right next to him. However, he felt as if Dong was so far away from him, as if she were on the other side of the world. He really wanted to take her into his embrace at this moment. Wang Qiu'er was stunned as she watched Hu Yuhao's tears roll down his face. This wasn't the first time she had seen him cry, but for some reason, she felt her heart grow cold this time. It's obvious that his tears aren't flowing for me. Is he thinking about her? Is she really that good? But we look exactly the same. Why? Why is this happening? Hu Yuhao suppressed his emotions and wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes as he softly pulled away Wang Qiu'er's arm that was holding onto his own. You're right, my chances of survival aren't great. Hu Yuhao began to speak, his expression once again calm and composed. Wang Qiu'er was delighted. She was about to say something before Hu Yuhao turned towards the delicate silk immortal and said, You, will I be able to leave this place in peace if I decide not to try? However, if I don't even have the courage to try it, I will be letting Dong down. His expression became extremely relaxed when he uttered the last few words. Hu Yuhao gazed into the horizon and said, We are bound to do crazy things from time to time in our lives. Dong, my only hope is that I can see you again. Phew, you're such an idiot. Skydream's voice rang out in Hu Yuhao's mind. Hu Yuhao was momentarily stunned, and he frowned faintly as he replied, Are you going to stop me too, brother Skydream? Skydream said plainly, That's enough, you don't have to say anything more. Just do it. Why would I stop you? If the Ice Empress were the one that was injured, I wouldn't cower away, either. Furthermore, you're underestimating how strong your body is. Don't forget that your body has absorbed life gold before, and you possess ultimate ice as well. You went through so much suffering when you fused with the Ice Empress back then, and the circumstances were so difficult, but you did it anyway. Your willpower is far superior to that of the average person, and I don't believe you will die just from eating some herb. Qiu'er Hao said, what if it's poison? Skydream grunted and said, it'll be perfect if it's poison. Do you know the delicate silk immortal's identity? She's so high up in the hierarchy that she can be considered above the other immortal-level herbs. I think most of the other plant-type soul beasts within the valley will listen to her command. I am also a soul beast, and I can feel that she doesn't harbor any hostility against you. What's more important is that the delicate silk immortal possesses formidable resistance against poison. The reason why there aren't any other plants growing around her is because she is the natural counter to all toxins. With her beside you, all you have to do is breathe vigorously even if you've been poisoned. It would be quite hard to die from it even if you wanted to. Qiu'er Hao's eyes grew a little slack. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? If I could have explained that to her, then I wouldn't have had to knock her unconscious. When she wakes up, Skydream's tone was a little arrogant as he said, I just woke up, alright, you win. He had been so sure he was going to die, but that negative thought was immediately converted into absolute confidence after he listened to Skydream's consolations. Yes. How can an herb kill me? I don't believe that. Qiu'er Hao's thoughts stopped here as he stepped before the delicate silk immortal. He lowered his voice and said, please give me that herb. I am willing to undergo this assessment. That's great. You're so courageous. Let me think, what should I give you? The delicate silk immortal was clearly quite ecstatic, and her enormous pink blossom was tossing from side to side. You said, yes. As long as you don't touch anything else in this place, and you're not afraid of the intense poisons outside, then you can leave as and when you want to. There was no question that she had a lot of self-confidence in her speech. It was still hard to say exactly how many hidden dangers there were inside this valley. At the very least, Yu was confident enough that she wasn't afraid of Qiu'er Hao bringing outsiders into the place. Perhaps there were more 100,000-year plant-type soul beasts in this place than everywhere else on the continent combined. Qiu'er Hao nodded and told her, thank you. He turned around and stared at Wang Qiu'er. Wang Qiu'er returned his gaze with a complicated expression in her eyes and said, let's go, alright. Qiu'er Hao nodded his head gently, but his eyes were still welling up with tears. Wang Qiu'er took the initiative to grab his hand. Even though the delicate silk immortal had said she wouldn't stop them from leaving, there were still many other dangers in this place, and it was still a lot safer for them to maintain their martial soul fusion. However, just when Wang Qiu'er began to infuse her soul power into Qiu'er Hao, she realized that her soul power didn't connect with his. Wang Qiu'er glanced at him in surprise. Qiu'er Hao's wrist suddenly flipped around at this moment, and he used the Tang San's arresting technique to accurately pinch Wang Qiu'er's carpal vein as he injected soul power into her. Wang Qiu'er immediately felt as if half her body had become extremely numb. Qiu'er Hao then raised his right palm and sliced down onto her neck. Wang Qiu'er's pretty eyes were fixed on Qiu'er Hao with a look of incredulity, but her body still crumpled downwards like a rag doll. Not in her wildest dreams did she expect Qiu'er Hao to attack her. Qiu'er Hao pulled gently and supported her waist with his right hand as he carefully placed her flat on the ground. Qiu'er Hao was very apologetic as he said, I'm sorry, Qiu'er. I know you won't let me make this choice if I don't do this to you. Yes, you're right, it's very likely that I will fail this test. Qiu'er Hao immediately became despondent. What's happening? Has she not decided upon the herb way before this? Why is she making an impromptu decision? This delicate silk immortal is so eccentric. The delicate silk immortal seemed to detect the changes in his emotions. She spoke with a scolding voice, don't worry. I've been alive for far too long, so it's normal that my memory isn't fantastic. Let me take a look at you. A purple beam of light floated out from her stamen as she spoke and landed on Qiu'er Hao. Qiu'er Hao maintained his vigilance, but the delicate silk immortal's ability arrived with no warning, and he couldn't detect anything with his spiritual detection, either. This meant the delicate silk immortal was stronger than he was in every possible way, and if he wanted to stop it, he could only meet force with force, because he had no chance of avoiding it. Fortunately, the purple beam didn't contain any hostility at all. The delicate silk immortal withdrew it after a while and muttered to herself, so, that's the case. Let me give you this. Another purple beam shot out from her stamen as she spoke. This purple beam fired into the distance, and reached 100 meters across the valley before it landed in a patch of vegetation. The purple beam paused momentarily before it was withdrawn. Qiu'er Hao had powerful eyes, and he could instantly tell that there was a single plant at the other end of it now. This herb was entirely unassuming, and its entire body was bluish-green. What was strange was that the plant had 3 snowy white leaves in the center, and there were several drops of water in the middle of these leaves, as if they were the remnants of the morning's dew. Qiu'er Hao knew nothing about this herb. He had no idea what it was, and the herb was quickly brought before him under the delicate silk immortal's guidance. It was impossible for Qiu'er Hao not to be nervous. This herb could be mortally dangerous to him, after all. Qiu'er Hao's eyes focused as he stared at the herb. How should I consume it? The delicate silk immortal answered, "First, let me ask you a question. You've come to the Icefire Yin-Yang well today, and no matter who told you about it, you must have a reason for being here. What are you doing here?" Qiu'er lowered his voice and said, "I'm here in search of a magical herb, called the yearning heartbroken grass. I need it to save someone's life." The delicate silk immortal said, "Yes, that must be it. I knew nobody would attempt to go through all those poison clouds for no reason at all. Lift your head and open your mouth." Qiu'er took a deep breath. It was impossible for him not to be hesitant about something that concerned his life or death. However, the thought that Donga could collapse in front of him and there would be nothing he could do about it flashed across his mind, and whatever hesitation he had before vanished into thin air. He gradually raised his head and opened his mouth, his eyes even more determined now. The delicate silk immortal controlled the herb and slowly brought it before Qiu'er. She tilted the plant, and the transparent dewdrop-like water droplets on its leaves immediately flowed into Qiu'er's mouth. Qiu'er felt a sweet taste flow down his throat, and a crisp aroma that refreshed his heart and mind immediately filled every corner of his body. "Is this poisonous? Why does it taste so good?" Qiu'er was still thinking to himself when he realized to his surprise that the herb was rapidly wilting away after the dewdrop-like liquid flowed into his mouth. The plant became a pile of dust in no time, and all it left behind were a few seed-like pods. Purple light flashed, and these tiny seeds flew far away into the distance. Nobody knew what the delicate silk immortal had in mind for them. "There's no reaction at all?" Qiu'er immediately channeled and circulated his soul power after ingesting those droplets as he protected his internal organs. Qiu'er discovered that the liquid worked similarly to the delicate silk immortal's fragrance. It was extremely easy to absorb it, and the liquid immediately became part of him once he ingested it, so there was no way he could separate it with his soul power. He didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, clean and refreshing sensations coursed over his entire body, feeling very comfortable. Qiu'er didn't dare to delay. He sat down cross-legged and quietly felt all the delicate changes that were happening to his body. It didn't take long before the thing he was waiting for arrived. The refreshing sensations extended across his entire body at first, but that feeling gradually started to withdraw and follow his veins through his limbs as they traveled upward towards his head. "This poison targets the head." Qiu'er felt his heart skip a beat. The brain was the most intricate part of the human body, and it was also the most important part, as the spiritual sea was located inside the brain. If toxins damaged the brain, even if he survived the ordeal, he could lose his rationality and his ability to think. Qiu'er controlled his soul power, and his soul power immediately congregated into 7 defensive lines at breakneck speed. These defensive lines webbed over his body in an attempt to block that fresh and chilly feeling from pushing up into his head. He reached downward with his spiritual power at the same time and combined it with his soul power, so that he could make use of the sovereign descent's mystical effects. From Qiu'er's perspective, fusing his soul power and his spiritual power provided an all-round defense, and was probably enough to barricade that peculiar herb's effects. However, Qiu'er realized he was wrong when the refreshing sensation surged up into his head. The herb's effects didn't travel along his passageways like his soul power did. The sensation had integrated into his veins, and it circulated through his body along with his blood. Qiu'er reacted quickly once he discovered this, and he swiftly sealed off his veins and passageways. This response was effective. His veins stopped circulating, and since the herb's effects were sealed within his veins, they also stopped flowing through his body. Qiu'er heaved a faint sigh of relief, but he quickly realized that he was just being daft. How long could he seal off his veins and passageways? Completely sealing off his veins meant that he was stopping his heart from beating. Even though he was a powerful soul king, he could probably only keep this up for several minutes before he would die from the lack of oxygen. If the herb's effects were concentrated in one place, he could let blood from his body into that area so that he could expel the toxin from his body. However, the problem was that the herb's effects were pouring in from every single part of his body. That meant that there was no way he could completely expel the toxin from his body unless he drained every single ounce of blood that he had. What kind of herb is this? It's so fierce and formidable. Qiu'er's mind began to work at lightning speed as countless thoughts surfaced in his mind in an attempt to find a solution. However, his efforts was futile. He couldn't find an appropriate response for this problem. He had now kept his veins sealed for a little too long, and he began to feel weak and suffocated. He couldn't keep this up for much longer. "That's it, looks like I can only take the hit." Qiu'er recalled what Sky Dream had just said to him, that toxins were useless as long as he was around the delicate Silk Immortal. Since that was the case, then it was possible that the delicate Silk Immortal hadn't given him poison. If so, then what could possibly happen to him if the herb's effects integrated with his body? He could only truly feel how it would affect his body through the integration process. It was better to try it than to let himself die from suffocation. With that in mind, Qiu'er gradually withdrew his spiritual power back into his spiritual sea, before slowly reopening his veins so that his blood could flow once more. The refreshing feelings appeared as soon as his veins were released. The sensations continued flowing upward through his veins, and slowly congregated towards his head. Hua Yuhao concentrated all his attention on the flow of these sensations. The clean and refreshing feeling quickly reached across his chest, but didn't attack his heart in any way as it continued traveling upward, just as he had suspected. The sensations swiftly crossed his neck. Even though Hua Yuhao was controlling the speed of his blood flow, the refreshing feeling was bound to continue upward as it flowed along with his blood. The sensations rushed into Hua Yuhao's head, but they didn't launch an attack against his spiritual sea or against his brain, they just exploded. This eruption made Hua Yuhao momentarily confused and hysterical. He felt a cold and clean feeling wave burst across his brain, and there was an indescribable restrictive feeling about everything. The sensations then began to congregate towards his eyes as if they were all rivers flowing into an ocean. Oh no! Hua Yuhao lost his composure as he suddenly considered a possibility. What did the delicate silk immortal discover when she surveyed his body? She was trying to inspect his martial soul. His martial soul was his spirit eyes, so the delicate silk immortal picked an herb that specifically targeted his spirit eyes. The intensely refreshing feeling had completely covered his eyes at this moment. Hua Yuhao felt as if his spirit eyes were being continuously rinsed by a peculiar force, as if something was being continuously injected inside them. What confused him was the fact that he didn't feel any agonizing sensations at all, and though he tried everything to make this feeling disappear, nothing worked. He couldn't do anything even when he sealed off his veins and blood flow. Does she want to obliterate my spirit eyes? That was what Hua Yuhao was most afraid of. However, he was already stuck in this situation, and the only thing he could do was channel his soul and spiritual power, and do all he could to protect his spirit eyes. His spirit eyes were neither fragile nor weak. They were his main martial soul, and had been cultivated constantly through the purple demon eyes, so they could in fact be considered powerful and formidable. Simply put, even if Hua Yuhao's eyes were stabbed by normal metal, it was unlikely they would be hurt. Spiritual power circulated around and through his spirit eyes. The refreshing sensations' backflow and absorption seemed extremely quick, and the feelings gradually disappeared. Hua Yuhao became increasingly nervous. He was most afraid that this peculiar force would erupt again after integrating into his body, and completely destroy his spirit eyes. The clean and fresh feeling slowly became fiery warmth. His eyes felt as if they were being bathed in lukewarm water, and his soul power and spiritual power became supplements for absorbing the herb's effects. Hua Yuhao didn't feel any pain, nor did he experience the eruption that he was expecting. Instead, he could feel an unprecedented degree of comfort in his eyes. The energy that had been injected into his eyes was nourishing his spirit eyes, and every pulse of absorption made him feel incredibly comfortable. Is this actually a harmful herb? Doubt finally surfaced in Hua Yuhao's mind. Can it be that I am that person's chosen one, the person that the delicate silk immortal speaks of? It seems like my judgment was correct. Uncle Niu Tian dared to send me here, and that means I should be able to pass the assessment in front of me. His anxiety slowly faded, and he began to regain his composure. Hua Yuhao continued channeling his soul power and spiritual power as he began to catalyze his absorption of the herb's medicinal effects. The girl that he had knocked unconscious came to right at this moment. Wang Qiu'er possessed the golden dragon martial soul, and her physical capabilities were extremely powerful, and Hua Yuhao hadn't used that much force when he sliced down on her neck. It didn't take too long before she naturally recovered by herself. Wang Qiu'er couldn't be bothered with being angry when she saw Hua Yuhao sitting on the ground with his legs crossed. She didn't even have to think to guess what he had done. You're such an idiot. Wang Qiu'er cursed under her breath, her large pinkish-blue eyes full of worry and anxiety. She targeted the delicate silk immortal in the next moment, and pointed the golden dragon spear in her hands as she exclaimed, What did you give him? The delicate silk immortal giggled and said, I have given him something good, of course. But I won't give it to you even if you want it. Wang Qiu'er said coldly, Listen, if something happens to him, I will make sure you die right where you are even if I have to pay with my life. I may even destroy everything else in this place. You'd better pray that nothing happens to him. The delicate silk immortal was a little surprised as she said, You sound like you have a lot of self-confidence. Where is your confidence coming from? Wang Qiu'er looked up at the sky as she gradually raised the golden dragon spear in her hands. Her body became a little translucent, and a strange energy flowed from her body in the next moment. She was shining with a faint scarlet gold light. This light wasn't intense, and neither were there any soul power undulations. However, the delicate silk immortal's enormous flower trembled when this scarlet golden light appeared, and even the plants around them started to quiver faintly. How can you possess a power like that? You, the delicate silk immortal's voice was no longer smooth, as if she had suddenly recalled something. The scarlet gold light was withdrawn as Wang Qiu'er said coldly, Tell me what you've given him, and whether he will be all right. I will make sure everyone else will die with him if he dies. Calm down. I didn't give him anything bad, the delicate silk immortal explained hurriedly, as if she were a little fearful of Wang Qiu'er. Now, you didn't give him anything bad? Wang Qiu'er asked doubtfully. No. The delicate silk immortal continued, that person left this rule behind all those years ago, and this rule is targeted at the people who come to this place in search of medicine and herbs to save someone's life. The truth is that there isn't a fixed herb for all these adventurers, and I choose the herb on a case-by-case basis. First, I have to be sure that the adventurer is here to save a life, and then I have to see whether the adventurer has the courage to consume the herb that I'll eventually give him. If the adventurer decides to consume this herb, that proves he or she has the courage, and this adventurer is willing to sacrifice his or her own life to save someone else. I will approve of a person like this, and this adventurer will be worthy of undergoing the subsequent assessment. Wang Qiu'er's eyes grew vacant as her jaw hung slack. What's going on? She turned back towards Hu Yuhao, where she saw a scarlet gold sphere hovering above his head, while scarlet gold light threads gradually wove and integrated themselves into his eyes. The delicate silk immortal said, that person said that this is a test of a person's personality, and a person cannot be evil if he or she is willing to sacrifice his or her life for someone else. Yes, he's courageous enough, and I've given him a mystical herb that's extremely suitable for him, and he should be thanking me. Please don't use that ability that you just showed me. Even though it's likely that we won't be able to resist it, you will definitely die along with us. Wang Qiu'er grunted coldly and said, why would I fight you to the death if you hadn't threatened us? This guy is so foolish, but he has his fool's luck. The person that you speak of is a real bastard, somewhere deep within the clouds in some unknown place. That person unwittingly sneezed. The delicate silk immortal was a little displeased as she said, you are not allowed to speak ill of him, he's a very good person. He could have destroyed us all when he first came here, but he didn't, and he even gave us a general plan so that we could use the Icefire Yin-Yang Wells effects to grow as quickly as we could. He's our savior. Otherwise, I wouldn't help him at all. Hu Yuhao did profit from his misfortune, after all. The refreshing feeling in his eyes gradually disappeared. He felt as if his spiritual power had been boosted, and that this transformation was qualitative rather than quantitative. The water inside his spiritual sea was originally golden, but there was now a blurry purple layer of light hovering above it. Both colors merged together to become a beautiful hue of purple gold. Hu Yuhao's entire spiritual sea was now in his grasp when he willed it so, and even Sky Dream, who had transformed into a ring on his finger, had a faint purple layer encircling him. The vertical eye above his spiritual sea that represented the Eye of Destiny didn't change much. That also meant that the herb had only affected his spirit eyes. Hu Yuhao slowly opened his eyes after the last of the herb's effects had been assimilated. He realized to his intense shock that the world had become entirely different when he perceived it again. The world around him seemed to be a lot more colorful than before. His eyes could detect the most delicate and intricate changes in his surroundings, and he could see the peculiarities of every detail even when he didn't release his martial soul. Hu Yuhao looked up at the sky above him. What he saw wasn't those rainbow-colored poison clouds. Instead, he saw countless minute particles, and he could distinguish each particle's color even though he was quite far from them. Hu Yuhao turned back towards the delicate silk immortal, and he realized that he could see the vast life energy circulating inside her. This life energy was a faint pink color, and it wove continually between her petals, stamen, and neck. He could even see what the energy undulations were like in the lake behind her. Hu Yuhao released his spirit eyes. He subconsciously wanted to try and see how his body would react with his spirit eyes activated, and he discovered that time began to slow. Hu Yuhao scrutinized everything with his spirit eyes. Not only did everything become a lot clearer than before, but everything seemed to also slow down. This sensation was just too strange, to the point where he almost couldn't believe what he was seeing. Hu Yuhao hurriedly asked mentally, Brother Skydream, what realm am I in now? Skydream answered, I think you've already entered the metaphysical realm, even though you're just at the beginner level. However, this realm is an important checkpoint that 99% of spiritual-type soul masters and soul beasts absolutely have to cross. I originally imagined that it would have been quite impressive if you could reach that realm within 10 years, but who knew? You have skyrocketed to this realm after eating that thing. You will understand when you listen to my explanation. When your spiritual power has form but no substance, you can even use spiritual power to suppress your ultimate ice soul power, and you can envelop your soul power when you cultivate so that it will no longer affect your body. Your cultivation speed will no longer be affected by ultimate ice, not in the least. Your cultivation speed after this can even surpass that of normal soul masters. While every single spiritual type soul skill that you possess has undergone a qualitative change as well, you can absorb another portion of the spiritual origin that I've sealed away in your spiritual sea. I will help you with that when we return, so that you can completely consolidate your position in this realm. When you have cultivated long enough that you've reached the pinnacle of this realm, then you can attempt to break through into the realm where your spiritual power has both form and substance. Once you've reached that stage, nobody else in the world can challenge you in terms of spiritual power. This pleasant surprise was simply too great. Hu Yuhao's spiritual power had been strengthened exponentially, while his overall abilities had also risen by an entire level. Even though his soul power wasn't boosted at all, his spiritual power had changed qualitatively to the point where he had reached the metaphysical realm, and that meant improvements in his soul power weren't that far away. Hey, are you alright? An extremely displeased voice suddenly jolted Huo Yuhao awake from his pleasant surprise. Huo Yuhao gradually calmed his emotions, but his eyes were still full of sullenness and grief. Wang Qiu'er wanted to get him back for knocking her unconscious after he woke up. However, she could see the dejection in his eyes, and she swallowed everything that she wanted to say. What's up? Wang Qiu'er touched his shoulder gently. Huo Yuhao shook his head and got to his feet. My spirit eyes and my spiritual power have undergone some transformations after I absorbed that herb. You're right, it's possible that this is the second awakening of my spirit eyes, but I can't be sure at the moment. Wang Qiu'er said, you should really thank Yu. She immediately repeated everything that Yu had said to her before this. This was the test. Huo Yuhao was no longer that little resentful and vengeful youth that he had been when he first departed from the Duke's mansion. His grief was fleeting, and he quickly recovered from it. Yu, if I hadn't taken that herb and I decided to leave with Wang Qiu'er, what would you have done? Huo Yuhao didn't directly express his gratitude, and asked this question instead. The delicate silk immortal heaved a sigh. Why are you so smart? A question like this hurts our relationship. If you hadn't taken the herb, that would only mean that you're not determined and you're extremely selfish. How would a person like this not tell anyone else about this place? Even though we are confident in being self-sufficient and of defending ourselves, there are just too many humans, and we can't be sure if we can protect our home in the end. According to that person, we can do what we want to you. If you had the ability to break through from here, then you should be allowed to leave. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.